Hello heathens, and welcome to Cult News episode 3. I don't have a ton of news for you today, but I do have a couple of rather long articles. So I do have an update here from a cult we did talk about last week. So for already stuttering. Don't forget to follow if you are watching. I do go live every week, and the episodes are being archived up on YouTube on the Word Grub channel. So you can subscribe over there as well. So yeah, just as a general content warning, every single cult has sexual abuse in it, just about, and other forms of abuse. So be warned of that. And we're gonna jump right into this one here. This tab keeps autoplaying the videos no matter what I do, so that might happen at some point. So this is for 11 Alive. Police reports offer new details on arrest of alleged DeKalb cult leader Nature Boy. Eligio Bishop faces 5 charges, including rape, in DeKalb County. So if you watched last week's episode, I did talk about this cult a little bit. They're called Carbonation, and I was excited in a way to see them in the news because I did follow them a few years ago, and yeah, I just happened upon them. They're a currently active cult. However, the leader is now in custody. And we're going to hear some more information about that, those charges, and from a couple other ladies. His wife and his victim also has spoken out in the media. So yeah, let's watch this video.
Tonight with a story you'll only see on 11 Alive. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Ron Jones.
And I'm Jennifer Bellamy. The wife of a reported cult leader wants to tell her side of the story. Eligio Bishop, also known as Nature Boy, remains behind bars tonight, facing charges that include rape. 11 Alive's Paula Suro just finished speaking with his wife, and she joins us live at the DeKalb County Jail where Bishop is tonight. Paula?
Yeah, Jennifer, you know, after 3 years of knowing each other, Velvet Marquez tells me Eligio Bishop forced her to marry him. Why? She says that he'd tell her that she'd then be forced to bail him out of jail if anything were to happen to him. And of course, today, something quite opposite is happening. She's telling us her side of the story.
I feel that now looking back, I feel that I fell in love with an idea because he pretended to be someone that he wasn't.
Behind this smiling face,
Okay. Right off the bat, I recognize her. So she was his first wife that I talked about in my previous video. That that's their child right here. They were pregnant on like their compound with some person's house, kind of in a rural area. I think it was might have been in Honduras or Costa Rica when she was pregnant, but they really wanted to have a home birth, and then eventually they made their way to a hospital. And yeah, I followed the whole saga through their very public social media and stuff. They have a YouTube channel, and yeah, so actually I'm shocked to see that she's the one who's filed charges against him, as that appears to be the case, because she was like obviously deep into it. Seemed like they really loved each other, and yeah, they have a kid together. So yeah.
Velvet Marquez faced her hardest years next to Eligio Bishop.
He literally held me hostage. He took all of my identification, my passport, my birth certificate, my social, my bank cards, everything, you name it, medical documentations.
She says Bishop, the leader of the so-called cult Carbonation, went from spoiling her to abusing her when she got pregnant.
I was forced to engage.
Spoiling her, so also known as love bombing, very common cult practice, abuser practice. If you have an abusive partner, they often will start out as very loving, very complimentary. They'll just shower you with gifts and other stuff. Same with a cult leader. They make you feel really special, and then once they have their hooks in you, then the mask comes off.
Sexual activity that I did not want to do. I was still strangled on multiple occasions, so I had to willingly engage in these sexual activities because of to keep myself safe. He would abuse me in front of the women.
She had their daughter in 2019, and a year and a half later, she says he forced her to legally marry him in a Las Vegas chapel.
There was no medical attention given to us, so when I actually went into labor, I had to be rushed to the hospital 2 hours away.
For years, the cult would drive and settle across Central America. Velvet says Bishop lived off of other members' PPP loans and life savings. She gave him her $3,000 college fund, while others gave tens of thousands of dollars. And after 4 tries, she successfully ran away with their daughter with no money but hope.
I was waiting for them to say what happened to the kid, so that's really good that she escaped with the child. Wow, it's crazy.
Child is important. I don't understand how anybody could leave their child to be with him or to go live with him.
Now, Velvet tells me she has since received death threats from Eligio and that he even showed up to her family's home in Louisiana just months after she ran away. Jennifer?
Paula, do we know, did she ever try reaching out to law enforcement?
She tells me she did, but it was very hard to track him down because he moves so often running away from law enforcement. But of course, now he is behind bars. Now, we also did speak to a former cult member, and we have her side of the story as well on 11alive.com. Jennifer?
All right, Paula, very involved story here. Thank you so much. Now, we have been following the story closely since Eligio Bishop's arrest. We have much more on the group that he's leading on our website, 11alive.com.
All right. So this article is by Jonathan Raymond. Eligio Bishop, the alleged cult leader known as Nature Boy, was arrested after a former member of the cult who identified herself as his girlfriend said he posted revenge porn because she left him. That and several other details about the case of Bishop, who has allegedly led more than a dozen followers in the Carbon Nation cult, as well as spread his influence with robust social media following in the tens of thousands, are revealed in police reports released to 11 Alive on Wednesday. According to the reports, the woman told police that she had joined a sex cult in which her boyfriend is the leader, and that she did live together with Mr. Bishop, and he has posted sexually explicit videos of her and him without her consent on Twitter. She said he had posted 4 videos without her consent and wants to press charges. Bishop, she added, had directed other women/girlfriends to hit her, which led her to escape. That contact with police on March 30th led to an investigation that resulted in Bishop's arrest on April 14th. According to DeKalb County jail records, Bishop faces 5 charges: rape, false imprisonment, and 3 counts of prohibition on nude or sexually explicit electronic transmissions. Under Georgia law, it's a violation of sending nude or explicit communications of someone without the consent of the depicted person. Other women who have left the cult, including one woman who said she was his wife, have said they've been subjected to sexual coercion and abuse. Bishop's cult reportedly began as one centered around sexual and naturalist themes, though social media accounts indicate more recently it has reoriented around Bishop's own messianic self-image and Black liberation messaging. Posts are heavy on the number 3 and ancient Egyptian iconography, while Bishop referred to as the 3 God in the accounts. He keeps changing his name, like, pick one, dude. His videos and sermons portray him as a godlike figure, and he said in one message after his arrest, "They want to crucify me, they want me dead. There's hate that surrounds me, you can feel it, just like any other prophet. Only me, I'm the return of the Christ." That's him there. I guess that's his mugshot. When he was arrested at an upscale cul-de-sac outside Decatur, I don't know how to say this, sorry. SWAT team members converged on the home and broke down a door and first encountered several of his followers, including a child. There were 14 other people in the house when Bishop was arrested on April 14th. A DeKalb County Police Department incident report describes the SWAT effort to get into the home. Upon arrival, the SWAT team exited the Sprinter van parked in the driveway of the location and moved around to side 2 of the residence. Announcements were made using the PA system from a DeKalb County police unit with emergency lights activated. As verbal announcements were being made for suspects to exit from the front door of the location, members of the SWAT team moved around to side 3 of the location through a backyard gate, which was unlocked. The SWAT members set up on the side 3 door and knocked on the rear door for suspects to exit the location, while also giving verbal announcements. Multiple subjects could be seen moving around inside the target location as verbal announcements were made. However, they refused to come to the door. They advised to breach the side 3 door and the door was breached open, causing damage to both the door and frame, and members of the SWAT team moved into the residence. Several adults, males and females, were lying down by the door. The suspect was given commands to crawl outside towards members of the SWAT team, where he was placed in custody without incident. The remaining adult males were detained and also escorted outside. I don't really know why they had to do that to the other men there. Haven't heard of any charges being pressed against them. Sounds pretty intense, though. At that point, the members were taken to the...
At this hour, police are investigating a double shooting that happened on that same stretch of road.
See what I was talking about, the autoplay? Just scared me to death. At that point, the members were taken to the CAP's Criminal Investigation Division to be interviewed and to give them the opportunity to leave the residence if they so desired. It's not clear if any chose to leave the call after meeting with police, though several have continued to support Bishop in public. Okay, I think that's it for that tab. All right. And now we have another video from 11 Alive.
The wife of a reported cult leader wants to tell her side of the story, and it's an interview you only see on 11 Alive. Eligio Bishop, also known as Nature Boy, is still in jail, facing charges that also include rape. His wife tells our Paula Soro he forced her to marry him after 3 years of knowing each other.
I feel that now looking back, I feel that I fell in love with an idea because he pretended to be someone that he wasn't.
Behind this smiling face, Velvet Marquez faced her hardest years next to Eligio Bishop.
He literally held me hostage. He took all of my identification, my passport, my birth certificate, my social, my bank cards, everything, you name it, medical documentations.
She says Bishop, the leader of the so-called cult Carbon Nation, went from spoiling her to abusing her when she got pregnant.
I was forced to engage in sexual activity that I did not want to do. I was still strangled on multiple occasions. So I had to willingly engage in these sexual activities because of to keep myself safe. He would abuse me in front of the women.
She had their daughter in 2019, and a year and a half later, she says he forced her to legally marry him in a Las Vegas chapel.
There was no medical.
Sorry, this is the same one we just watched.
With him.
So in the previous article, they were saying there's another woman who has escaped. So actually, it's not clear if it was her, that first wife, that pressed the charges, or if it's this other lady we haven't heard from yet that is pressing charges. Oh, this might be her name. Okay, so this is on 11 Alive again. It was mental and verbal abuse. Former cult member speaks out after leader's arrest. Erica Carroll was one of the first members of the so-called Carbon Nation cult. She joined in 2016 when it was called Melanation and left a year later. I don't know why I said after there. Okay, so we'll just watch the video.
Messages, phone calls, even visits to her home following the 2020 presidential election.
But tonight, a Fulton County election worker is being awarded with a special honor, joining the ranks of...
This is not a related video. The site does the thing where it will autoplay.
Developing tonight, an accused cult leader is in jail facing several charges. His name is Eligio Bishop, but he's known as Nature Boy. According to DeKalb County jail records, he's charged with rape, false imprisonment, and sending sexually explicit messages without the consent of the person in the picture. Bishop and the followers of the Carbon Nation cult have a reported history dating back several years. New tonight at 11, a former member is speaking to Paula Suro about the time with the group, and Paula is joining us live from the DeKalb County jail where Bishop is being held right now.
Yeah, Jennifer, Erica Carroll tells me she is glad Bishop is behind bars tonight. She tells me she believes that him being in jail is only going to help open the eyes to the current members of Carbon Nation.
What would you call it? A group? A cult? Would you call it a cult?
I call it a cult now, yes. Yes, I do.
A Facebook post convinced Erica Carroll to move from New York to Honduras in 2006 to embark on a life-changing experience, one where she was told she'd be able to build a new community, eat vegan food, and be in touch with nature.
It was just in a place in my life where I was just searching for some spiritual truth.
The group back then was known as Melanation. Carol says it was led by Eligio Bishop, who went by Nature Boy. She says all 9 of them were forced to sleep in tents, use restrooms outside, and attend long meetings to, quote, face your demons.
it was a lot of verbal and mental abuse.
But after 1 year, what got her to leave was when she says she witnessed Bishop hit his girlfriend at the time.
He slapped her up and punched her a couple of times, and then he told her to go in the tent and give him oral sex. So that was the breaking point for me.
But walking away, she realized, was easier than going back home.
I had to check myself into a couple of hospitals and get my mind right. I was seeing spirits, I'm not gonna lie, you know what I'm saying? Like I was going through a lot, and it was all connected to him though.
Carol says since leaving in 2007, the cult, now known as Carbon Nation, turned more abusive and sexual. She says for some, it wasn't as easy to leave.
He has the women fighting each other. He's put his hand on the men. He always said that he wanted like a lot of wives, like he want, 10 wives.
He's had a history of charges before his arrest this week. Carol remembers being in Costa Rica when she says he was accused of kidnapping a Canadian woman who was staying with them. Now, Carol tells me she has been in touch with Bishop since leaving the cult in 2007. She tells me she even had a feeling he was going to get arrested soon and texted him just days ago telling him, "Your days are numbered." Jennifer?
Wow, Paula, thank you so much for that update. Like we have said, this investigation into Bishop and this reported cult goes back more than 10 years. For a closer look into what we know, you can look for this story on 11alive.com.
All right.
Okay, some additional info in there. I'm going to turn this down in case it starts autoplaying again. Good for her. Good for Erica for getting help after she left, and good for her for leaving. Yes, I did read that. Okay. Okay, so this is by Paula Massaro, the reported leader of a cult who refers to himself as a god, Christ-like figure, and allegedly sexually exploits his members, is now in jail in DeKalb County facing charges that include rape. One of the first alleged members of the cult, Erica Carroll, said she is grateful he is behind bars. Those people that are still in the cult, their only hope is for him to be locked up right now. For him to be locked up, period. It's too many things he's gotten away with, Carroll said. Back in 2016, a Facebook post convinced her to move from New York to Honduras to embark on a life-changing experience. She says she was told she'd be able to build a new community there and be in touch with nature. I was just in a place in my life where I was searching for some spiritual truth, she said. When she arrived, she was picked up at the bus station by a man she still refers to as Nature Boy, or Eligio Bishop. Carol says one of the members of the group donated $300,000 to Bishop, while another gave them a plot of land. That person who gave them the $300,000, I've heard, is someone who I mentioned before donated their inheritance or life insurance they gotten from losing their parents. She adds that Bishop did not work. I mean, of course, he didn't work. He just live streams all day. A few months after arriving in Honduras, they drove in a van to Costa Rica and settled there. We slept outside in tents. We wouldn't live in the house. We would get up, eat fruit because we had to eat vegan or vegetables, and we would get to work, she said. Excuse me. During the day, those who loved to paint had the opportunity to do so, while Carol, who is an audio engineer, got to do music in a studio Bishop set up for her. At first, everything seemed promising until it didn't. That reminded me, I was thinking about this group, like what I observed before I started the stream. I thought I remembered him doing a couple songs, like he released a couple singles while I was following them. He's just like a crazy narcissist. When I got there, I felt I had a pretty good self-esteem and self-confidence, but after every day being there and told, "You're not doing this right, you're so wrong," when I left, I felt like my self-esteem was so low. I had no confidence, she said. That's another thing cult leaders and abusive partners will do. The dynamic is very much the same. Between the two is they will love bomb you and make something seem like almost too good to be true, and then they systematically break down your sense of self-esteem, self-worth, and it's really, really hard to build it back up again. And that's how they keep you in control, is by telling you you're incapable of being without them, essentially. She said that they had to eat vegan food, sleep in tents, and weren't allowed to use restrooms indoors. Instead, they were forced to do it in nature. Everyone was also given nicknames. Hers was BP, which stood for Blueprint, because she was one of the first members of the group. But the meetings, she said, were the worst part. We'd have to sit in these long meetings. He'd say we'd be facing our demons while doing that. But basically, he's just projecting onto you what he has going on inside of him. She recalled it was a lot of verbal and mental abuse. The group back then was known as Melanation. Carol's turning point, she said, was when she witnessed one of Bishop's girlfriends, who he referred to as wife, got beat up by him. He beat her, she said. He hit her in the mouth, he slapped her and punched her a couple of times, and then he told her to go to the tent and give him oral sex. That was the breaking point for me. Once I seen that, I was like, oh no. She left the day after, and I left the day after that. But walking away from the cult was easier than going back home for her. She struggled to get jobs and started going to therapy. I had to check myself into a couple of hospitals and get my mind right. I was seeing spirits, I'm not going to lie to you. I was going through a lot, and it was all connected to him. Sorry, this is like direct quotes from the video. Carol, who now lives in her home city of Decatur, said that since leaving in 2017, the cult, now known as Carbon Nation, turned more abusive and sexual. His behavior has gotten worse over time, she said. A lot of things that he's doing now, he wasn't doing that when he was there. I guess she means like South America. According to DeKalb County jail records, Bishop was arrested this week and faces 5 charges. We already went over this. Carol said she's glad Bishop is behind bars now. She believes that him being in jail will help open the eyes to the current members of the cult. I don't think so. I think oftentimes when this happens, a cult leader ends up looking like a martyr to most of their followers. Some people who are already rather disenchanted might leave, but those who are really deep into it are just going to probably stick by him no matter what. He constantly says the same things over and over and over. You can't watch any other teachers. You can't read any other books. He wants everything to just be him. If you read How to Brainwash Somebody, that's basically how you do it, she said. He now has the women fighting each other. He's putting his hands on the men. He always said he wanted a lot of wives. He wanted 10 wives. Carol added that she's been in touch with Bishop since leaving in 2017.
One of the roles of news is to send out important emergency alerts. You hear us talking about Amber Alerts and Maddie's call.
Make it stop. Okay, yeah, this is where it is. Carol added that she's been in touch with Bishop since leaving in 2017. So she actually got in contact with him. She said her anger has since turned to compassion. To me, he's just a broken little kid. He's 40 years old, but he's a broken kid. He's projecting that hurt and pain onto everybody else, she said. I know his mother and father died while he was a young age, and so he was in foster homes, in and out of foster homes, and a couple did adopt him, and there was some abuse going on in that situation, so he had it hard. But we've all had it hard. Everybody had it hard. He's had a history of charges before his arrest this week. Carol even remembers being in Costa Rica when she said he was accused of kidnapping a Canadian woman who was staying with them. This time around, she had a feeling his arrest would come. She said they are both still connected spiritually. That's a little worrisome. Even a couple of days ago, I texted him and said, your days are numbered. I don't know what made me say it, but I told him your names are numbered, and look what happened, she said. Okay, so that's that on that. I hope he serves some time. I think I said last time also that usually people convicted of those types of crimes spend like 2 years. I almost said 2 hours. 2 years behind bars. 5 is like the max. So, yeah. I'm sure he's going to get out soon. Again, it's not really clear if that wife, Velvet, the ex-wife Velvet, was the one who pressed charges. It's possible the victim is protecting her identity, and the media is protecting her identity too. So this one's more of like a general, like human interest, I guess, article. It looks super long, but I scrolled down and it's only about half of this scroll bar thing. The rest is like links. So this is on the New York Magazine, but it says Intelligencer up here, which I don't know what that is referring to. And it is called Why Do We Fail People and Cults? Lessons from the Larry Ray Trial by Ezra Marcus and James D. Walsh. So Larry Ray is someone we covered in the last 2 episodes as well. He has been found guilty, and I'll be following up with him after his sentencing, which is not for like a few more months, I think. Okay, so for nearly 3 weeks in March, Phil Elberg would take the train from New Jersey to the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan to watch the trial of Larry Ray. Elberg, a retired attorney, wasn't representing anyone in the case, and while high-profile trials sometimes attract true crime rubberneckers, Elberg was hardly one of them. For decades, Elberg had represented victims of coercive control, including 2 people involved in the infamous NXIVM cult, long before its leader was indicted. He also worked with former patients of Kids of North Jersey, a program for troubled teens that abused and brainwashed adolescents in its care. That is an incomplete sentence, but yeah, I think they meant to say it helped. But yeah, so the term brainwash kind of is problematic. I talked about it a bit in the first episode, that it makes it sound all kind of like woo-woo and doesn't really address the actual behavioral science behind mind control. Anyway, like most unusual specialties, his has a backstory. When Elberg was in his early 20s, his younger sister introduced him to someone she described as her boyfriend. The man, Elberg says, turned out to be a cult leader, a description he does not use lightly. Elberg's sister spent the next 40 years under his control until she died in 2009. That is so sad. There are people out there who meeting them is like winning the negative lottery, Elberg said. My sister's experience made me realize that it could happen to anyone. When asked why he felt compelled to make the trek to watch Ray's victims recount the harrowing details of their own experience with control, coercion, and abuse, Elberg said Ray was a maximalist case study that fascinated him. Then he paused. I've spent too much of my life thinking about what I did or didn't do, the signs I didn't pick up on when my sister was trying to leave, he said. When I thought about Claudia Drury's parents, Santos Rosario's parents, and the things they did or didn't do, I thought to myself, every family has a story. It's a mistake to ever make this about the family and not give the devil his due, and Larry Ray is the devil. Ray's trial ended last week with the jury speedily declaring him guilty on 15 charges, including sex trafficking, extortion, and forced labor. Much of the trial was made up of witness testimony about coercion, intimidation, violence, and control. Ray was the subject of a New York story in 2019 that sparked an FBI investigation. He'll be sentenced in September and faces life in prison. While reporting on Ray, we have tried to keep some versions of Elberg's negative lottery metaphor in mind. What are the odds that a Sarah Lawrence College student's dad could move into a dorm and proceed to manipulate a group of students into years of servitude and misery? Yet understanding how improbable that scenario is hasn't helped us answer the question everyone asks: how the hell did it happen? That's that creepy thing there. People who ask that question come at it from one of 2 angles. They either want to know exactly what it was about Ray's personality, his charm, and cunning nature that roped his victims in, or they want our take on the foundational failures, parental, legal, or institutional, that allowed Ray to prey on his victims. Why was he so strong, in essence, or in what ways were the victims weak? The first question is less of a mystery. Ray was a large and captivating character. He swept in and offered unfettered attention, encouragement, and concrete advice when other adults, parents, professors, actual therapists, might offer abstract guidance. All of it was packaged with the trappings of a cool dad, someone who ordered extravagant takeout dinners, provided a crash pad in Manhattan, and talked at an impossible clip about topics ranging from tomato sauce to the military. As Daniel Barbin Levin, one of Ray's victims, wrote in his memoir, Slonim Woods 9. Not all of Ray's daughter's roommates bought into his shtick, but those who did quickly found themselves stuck. The other, more vexing question speaks to the guardrails in Ray's victims' lives. Their families tried in different ways to pry their children from Ray's grip. They often found that, as if wading into quicksand, their efforts made things worse. Ray convinced his adherents that he had something close to mind-reading abilities, then used that belief to implant notions in them of childhood abuse, which were often coupled with accusations that their parents were part of a shadowy conspiracy. Any effort parents made to extract their kids was proof of both parental overreach and Ray's fantastic conspiracy. Isabella Pollock, whom the government has charged as Ray's co-conspirator, accused her family of failing to protect her from a sexual predator and cut off contact. Jury also cut ties with her parents, testifying in housing court that her mother had been in cahoots with Ray's enemy, Bernie Carrick. The Rosario siblings began telling people their parents were drug dealers. "I can't reach you. What changed? I don't understand," wrote Levin's father in an email to him during his senior year of college. "This only seems to happen when you are at Larry's, but I can't figure it out. Are you in a trance? Drugs?" The Rosario parents, who had 3 children fall under Ray's spell, told us they went to the NYPD 3 times to report Ray, but were told there was nothing the police could do because their children were adults. Institutions, including the NYPD, need to be aware that abusers are manipulative and clever, said Chitra Raghavan, an expert in coercive control and victim psychology at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. People take you seriously when you tell them a story that resonates with them, and often when parents or students tell the story, they're halting. They don't have the language to explain how afraid they are or how intense the abuse is. And I would add to that when you're like deep into it, you don't really realize how bad it is. Like, it's not until you actually get out of a situation like this, you're like, oh yeah, that was abuse. Going on. Of course, why should parents, victims, or family members have the language to describe such an astronomically unlikely dynamic? Often by the time they realize what's happening, it's already too late. The Larry Ray story is often referred to as the Sarah Lawrence cult story, and yet we have never heard from the institution. After we published our story in 2019, Sarah Lawrence's president, Crystal Collins Judd, wrote in a statement that the school found no evidence to support the claim that this parent lived on the campus during the 2010 to 11 academic year. When Ray was indicted 9 months later, Judd released another statement. The question, how could the college not know this, has been asked by many, including myself, she wrote. What we do know is that no reports about this parent's presence on campus during that semester, formal or informal, were lodged by students sharing that small living space, by their student neighbors, or by anyone else. The idea that a man like Ray could live on a college campus for months without triggering some school-wide alarm seems preposterous until one considers the social environment of liberal arts campus life, the housing setup, and the atmosphere within this particular dorm. Like, honestly, I went to college, there was a couple older students there. If I saw, say, this guy in my dorm or on campus, I would just think they're another student. Like, you don't have to be 18 to 21 to go to college, so. The dorm in question, Slonim Woods 9, is a freestanding house without a live-in resident advisor. Although overnight guests at Sarah Lawrence were required to sign in with the campus front desk, there was no mechanism to keep track of who was actually coming and going. Yeah, I mean, especially if it's a separate building, and there's no one really monitoring it, then it'd be pretty easy. Ray would only have needed someone to unlock the front door for him. All 8 residents knew each other, and Ray's daughter Talia had told many of them over the previous year about her heroic father. It just didn't seem all that weird to some of Talia's roommates that Ray needed somewhere to crash after getting out of prison. And as Levin told us, the dorm's residents were talking about getting a big bag of sand and dumping it out on the kitchen floor to make a tiny beach. It's not like we were trying to have a normal household. Well, there may not have been reports filed about Ray during the window of time Judd referenced. Evidence introduced at trial shows that some faculty members were made aware of Ray while his victims were enrolled at the school. Jury testified that not long after meeting her roommate's father, she told a professor, Nancy Baker, that she felt uncomfortable with Ray sleeping in Pollock's room. In 2011, Jury sent an email to Alan Green, then Sarah Lawrence's Dean of Student Life, along with several other teachers, administrators, and students, in which she seemed to recant that statement. Titled The Truth, the email outlined a bizarre tale. Jury claimed she had expressed fears and concerns about Larry Ray being a bad, dangerous, manipulative, and sexually deviant man to teachers and administrators, only because Ray's ex-wife had ordered her to do so. Jury later testified that she had written that letter with direct input from Ray. Yeah, I was just gonna say that sounds like he pressured her to recant that. Joseph M. Pierce, welcome to the stream. How are you? Jury praised Ray further in a 2012 email to Green, in which she asked to be reinstated after taking time off because of a hospitalization for mental health issues. Sarah Lawrence is the place this journey began for me when I met Larry for the first time 2 years ago, she wrote. His friendship changed my life. She went on to describe how Ray inserted himself into her psychiatric care, meeting with her doctors and talking to her parents on her behalf in order to break them out of their denial. She was readmitted to Sarah Lawrence. In several 2011 emails, we've seen Pollock describes to Baker and another professor, Kim Ferguson, how important her relationship with Ray was. Green was CC'd on one of the emails. I have only a vague memory of this, Baker wrote in a 2018 email in response to an inquiry that outlined Ray's dealings with her former students. I knew something not good was happening either to one of my students or to a roommate, but I had no idea it was this bad or that the father in question had been in prison on a felony charge. Baker did not respond to a recent request for comment. Ferguson declined to comment when reached in 2019. Michael Davis, another professor CC'd on Drury's 2011 email, also declined to comment. The Drury name is like kind of confusing because it sounds like I'm saying jury. Drury? It's hard for me to say. Green, who retired in 2019, has never responded to a request for comment. Aside from Judd's statements, the school has said little about the case. The Sarah Lawrence Emanon, the campus newspaper, has not published an article about Ray or the trial. Just because the school has been mum about Ray doesn't mean the community isn't interested. A rotating crew of current Sarah Lawrence students watched nearly every minute of Ray's trial from the gallery over the past month. The students were about the age of Ray's victims when he met them. Elberg and those students are just a few examples of the larger group of people invested in Ray's case. Over the years, we've heard from other victims of Ray's and of other abusers. Shortly after Ray's guilty verdict, we received a text from the mother of a former student at a prestigious college who fell under the sway of a classmate's parents under eerily similar circumstances. She hasn't seen her child in years, and Ray's guilty verdict offered her a sliver of hope. One of the reasons these things go on the way they go on is because in order to stop them, you have to be all in. You can't stop them by nicking them in the arm. You need to devote your life to taking them down, said Elberg. It's easy to see how the burden of ending coercive control of relationships falls on the victims themselves. The abusers are simply too adept at exploiting institutional blind spots and towing the law's fuzzy boundaries. Careful not to raise the hackles of law enforcement, in Ray's case, it wasn't until the victims began telling their stories to the press, to law enforcement, and to the jury that they brought their abuser to justice. Few stories could be harder to tell than juries. During her 2.5 days of testimony spread out across 12 days because of delays caused by Ray's 2 apparent medical emergencies, jury brought the full measure of Ray's horrific abuse into focus. According to jury's attorney, Brooke Susanella, jury insisted she stay until she told her whole story, the details of her own abuse, and what she witnessed Ray do to others. That's Claudia Jury. I believe she's his victim that he pimped out. He made millions of dollars off of her. Claudia is among the smartest women I have met. She is still healing, but her strength is inspiring, and she will heal from this. I cannot wait to see what choices she makes for herself going forward. I feel lucky to know her, Susanella said. Soon after the verdict, Susanella and Assistant U.S. Attorney Daniel Sassoon called jury to tell her Ray had been convicted on all 15 counts. Sassoon surprised jury by having the Rosario siblings, Santos, Yalitza, and Felicia, who were all in the courtroom to hear the verdict, on speakerphone. Jury had not spoken to any of the Rosarios in years, since even before her 2019 escape from Ray. Hearing their voices, their relief, and that they were together and happy, that was more meaningful to me than Larry finally being held accountable to what he did to each of us, jury said through Susanella. In the days following the verdict, jury still struggled to find some inner peace, but according to Susanella, she also recognized the role she played in holding Ray accountable and felt a sense of relief that her story had resonated with the jury. She had helped them understand that Ray was culpable for everything she and her friends had been through. Jury has begun to think about her future, about life beyond Ray, and the unwanted media attention that recounted the sordid details of her abuse. For the first time since she was in college, Jury is free to think about what she wants out of life. She's considering a career in law or academia while rebuilding her relationships with friends and loved ones. Whatever her future holds, Jury is certain about one thing: it won't be defined by Larry Ray. Whew, that was a long one. But yeah, I think that article was valuable because they kind of pointed out that it's really, really hard for the families to pull their loved ones out of groups like this. And that it's possible that law enforcement could be doing more to intervene. And at the very least, the campus should have been investigated when it was reported that he was living there that he was around on campus and not as a student. Like, he was never registered as a student as far as I know. I forget if I mentioned in the first episode what his previous incarceration was for. Yeah. Okay. Last article. This one again is super long. I don't think I can read it all because I'm already getting like raspy voice. So I just wanted to go over quickly because this guy is currently active, still an active abuser, and he's kind of running like an Instagram cult. I kind of like browsed this quickly, and it's not really clear to me how many people like in person are following him yet. So yeah, this is on Rolling Stone. It's called The Instagram Guru Fucking His Female Followers to Freedom. Polyamorous cigar-chomping Bentinho Massaro allegedly brainwashed his most devoted followers, by E.J. Dickinson. E.J. Dixon. Okay, I'll just read like the first handful of paragraphs. In May 2017, a friend... By the way, this is him. Just so you know. In May 2017, a friend sent Jade Electra, a 34-year-old California-based yoga teacher and Instagram influencer with about 75,000 followers, a video featuring a spiritual guru she'd never heard of before. The man was small, blonde, and sprightly, almost elfin in appearance. He spoke with a gentle Dutch accent, offering promises of self-actualization and reaching another plane of consciousness. Although his teachings consisted of fairly generic spiritual koans, he looked nothing like a typical ethereal guru. On Instagram, he regularly showed off his fondness for cigars and fine blended whiskeys. He often posted photos of himself with his tanned arms snaked around the waist of one or more waifish, mermaid-haired women, and with his toned biceps and Zach Morris-esque swoop of sun-kissed hair, he more closely resembled a pampered surfer boy whose dad had paid his way into Stanford than a spiritual leader. I think that's a really apt description. That's exactly what he looks like in the pictures. The guru's name was Bentinho Massaro, and at first Electra says she was profoundly unimpressed by him, describing his content as very mashed potatoes. A lot of things he says are almost like riddles. To know everything is to know nothing, which means to know everything. She remembers, I never really found much value in that. I just didn't understand it. But Electra, who lived in Los Angeles at the time, such a hotbed for cults, by the way, trusted her friend, a fellow teacher at the Addiction Recovery Center where she worked. So for reasons even she can't quite understand, she followed Massaro on Instagram. I was like, okay, he's kind of attractive, he's young, he's my age, maybe in a few years I'll get it, she says. After Massaro did an episode on his podcast deconstructing the boundaries of traditional monogamy and plugging polyamory, Electra, who was in a flailing relationship at the time, DM'd him to let him know how deeply it had affected her. They had a brief, polite exchange. With his apparent penchant for tailored suits, high-end meals, and exotic Instagram-ready locales, Massaro's persona all felt very Great Gatsby, she says. He seemed very opposite of all the teachers that I had met and known that teach spirituality. He was in the fast lane, and I liked that attitude. That seemed refreshing to me and real. Electra started following one of Massaro's girlfriends, Corey Katuna, on Instagram, offering her an hour-long free Reiki session. They had an instant connection, she says, and a few months later, seemingly out of the blue, Katuna invited her on a retreat, though she wouldn't tell her where it was and said she had to sign an NDA if she wanted to go. Massive red flag. One of the stipulations was that if she broke it, Massaro could sue her for $300,000. Electra was simultaneously repulsed and intrigued. I was kind of afraid that I would get there and it would be this crazy orgy and I'd be this like fresh mouse that they drop into the cage, she says. Then she remembered that a few months before she had gone to see a tarot card reader who had told her that she would meet a man who was a little older than her boyfriend, who wasn't her soulmate, but who would be good for the world and with whom she could one day do great things. She blames everything that happened to her after that on that moment. Sorry if you're laughing. I just the tarot card reading thing. Part spiritual leader, part wellness guru. part aspirational Instagram bro, Massaro is a curious blend of various social media personae. He leads self-help retreats all over the world and has garnered tens of millions of views on YouTube, where he's been posting his slickly packaged lectures for the past decade. On Instagram and Facebook, where he has cultivated nearly 1 million followers with his daily affirmations, his message resists most attempts at interpretation. The underlying subject of all objects is itself the subtlest object of them all. I'm going to read that again. The underlying subject of all objects is itself the subtlest object of them all. What does it mean? He says in one recent post in which he gazes blankly into the distance, release yourself of the subject as if it were a final object. You can deny focus and realize your true state beyond. Okay, let me just comment on this for a minute. So this is part of like the brainwashing or like mind control thing where he's saying release yourself of the subject, deny focus to find your true state. So basically he's saying like wipe your mind, the whole mindfulness thing. So then he's going to implant his ideas into that clean slate of the followers. And like the whole daily affirmation thing has always seemed like a gateway drug to cults to me. Like I know a couple girls who post this type of thing on their Instagram stories almost every day, and I just worry about them so much because it just makes me sense that they're very vulnerable and that they could be vulnerable to this type of guy. Or woman, like it doesn't matter. This type of like mind control, I almost said brainwashing again, but this type of, thought control group or high control group. Yet, if you probe beneath the surface, Massaro's teachings seem to bear the distinct mark of a dark messianic complex. He has openly stated that he can teleport, bilocate, and levitate. He allegedly prescribes restrictive fasts and diets, which cult experts say helps keep followers malleable, a claim he denies. He has sex with female followers as a way to reward them and to punish them for apparent misdeeds, which seems weird, but okay. According to 2 women I spoke with who'd had relationships with him, and his teachings skewed toward open misogyny, instructing followers on the strict dichotomy of traditional gender roles, and urging women to resist their more active masculine impulses, writing in one 2016 post that femininity is defined by radiance and surrender. It's worth noting that strict gender dichotomies are common in cults, with the self-improvement organization NXIVM espousing a similar ideology. So by him saying to these women, like, oh, you're being masculine, he's pointing something out about them that probably isn't anything wrong, and that's part of the whole breaking down of their self-esteem and their identity, and using that as like a point of control. And then like the whole teleport and levitate thing, I don't know why almost every single cult has this, where the leader promises to teach you how to levitate. It's like one of the most bizarre things of the whole subject to me, where it's like, why do you need to levitate? I don't get it. Like, why does that become appealing? It like, I don't know. I just can't imagine that ever impressing me. The whole levitation thing, like, I'm not like blaming the followers or the victims or anything, but it's just such an odd thing I see in almost every single instance as well. Okay, I'm gonna finish this soon, but I'll just cover this part. One person has died following his involvement with Massaro's group. Brent Wilkins, a handsome former college tennis player who took his own life at the end of 2017 after Massaro had made public comments at a prior retreat that appeared to endorse suicide, prompting a police investigation and Massaro and his followers to flee from the fallout. The group has since ping-ponged around the world, from a monastery in the Netherlands to a spiritual center in Quito, Ecuador. Ultimately, Massaro was not a suspect in Wilkins' death, which was treated as a suicide. In February 2022, 3 of Massaro's former followers, Electra, Massaro's former girlfriend Jacqueline Graham and Electra's former partner Kaylin McNeil came out against Massaro in a podcast by former NXIVM member Sarah Edmondson and to the Dutch newspaper Die Volkskrant. It doesn't say, but I believe their podcast is a little bit culty. That's the name of it. The Dutch newspaper Die Volkskrant, sparking a new wave of allegations that he was leading a cult. Such allegations have surfaced in the past, notably in a Guardian expose in 2020 and a 2019 Vice documentary titled The Controversial Guru That Wants to Upgrade Civilization. Ooh, I'm going to check that out. I like Vice's documentaries. The Vice documentary featured Massaro answering the question on how he feels about the cult label. Quote, "We are a cult. We are curious, understanding, loving tribe." I see this from cult leaders a lot of the time too, where they like come up with these pseudo meaningful like definitions to just give it up, dude. Yet with the COVID-19 pandemic leaving many searching for answers, Massaro has been able to exponentially grow his following. He has nearly 1 million subscribers on Facebook and more than 100,000 on YouTube, prompting concerns from former members and those who track cults. Okay, so I'm going to cut it off there. This is like so insanely long. So if you want to read it, it's here on Rolling Stone. And yeah, that is, what's his name? Bentinho Massaro. And yeah, I hope you guys found something educational in this stream. And it will be up on YouTube, as I said at the beginning, on my Word Grub channel. And I'm actually going to be live streaming again tomorrow on my main YouTube channel on Wikipedia with my friend Matthew. We're going to be reviewing Utada Hikaru's live performance from Air Studios that came out with the Bad Mode album. So that should be fun. I better go like rest my voice now. So yeah, I will see you next week for the next episode of Cult News. Bye.